Hi, Kyle Mosley here with the Bayou Blitz, and I have Mr. Bob Rose on the mic with me today, man. You know, we are giving you guys a little special I guess, some free agency. We're going to talk some Jameis Winston. We're going to talk a little bit about Drew Brees' retirement and, kind of give you some updates on the NFL and what to expect as well. But, Bob, the Saints have had a whole lot of activity over the last couple of days. They haven't been as active in free agency as many people, I know a lot of fans want to see, but the Saints are still handling that salary cap. From last estimates, the New Orleans Saints have finally reached their goal to get under the salary cap. It's amazing what Mickey Loomis and Kai Hartley has been able to do, man. So let's just kind of shoot the breeze and talk a little bit about that. But before we go into it, guys, mash up the likes, like what we're doing. If you want to subscribe on our YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as if you have any comments that you'd like to have us to fill, we are able to give you some our thoughts on what's going on with the Saints as well. Okay, Bob, take it away.
Well, first of all, good morning, Who Dat Nation, and thank you so much if you're joining us live. And if you're watching the rebroadcast, we love you for your support. And like Kyle said, hit subscribe on YouTube. You'll get those notifications in advance when we're going to be going on, because we're going to have some scheduled shows, a lot of scheduled shows throughout the off season. But we're going to do some impromptu things like this too, especially during free agency and the draft process. But for those of you that have followed us from the start, again, thank you so much for your support. But listen, like Kyle said, the Saints have been busy. I know some of you fans are a little bit frustrated at the lack of activity as far as signing free agents off of the open market. Listen, if you follow the team, you knew that it was going to be very, very difficult for this team to do. I think, and I agree with you, Kyle, I think that Mickey Loomis and Kai Hartley deserve a pats on the back, a raise in their paycheck, and all kinds of accolades for what they've been able to do just to get this team cap compliant. They've had to release a few starters, and we went through this last week. Nick Easton, Jared Cook, Josh Hill, Thomas Morstead, I realize is the emotional one, Emmanuel Sanders, Quan Alexander, Janoris Jenkins, and then they traded Malcolm Brown just the other day to the Jaguars. All those players are very talented, and it's not that the Saints didn't like them or like their contributions, but they had to do it for business reasons. You look at the product that this team is set to put on the field as of right now, and yes, they do have holes that they need to fill, probably more so through the draft. But this is still one of the most talented teams in the NFL.
Yeah, one of the most talented teams, and still you have to really consider what you're dealing with. And I read a couple of things from Randy Mueller, old New Orleans Saints general manager, and also I listened to what Bill Polian said as well. When you're handling cap situations and dealing with the risk reward type of situations and scenarios, you have to be able to take the players that you have or the player that you may have to risk releasing out to the market, because if you keep that player, you're going to upset the balance of what you need to do to be able to man personnel on the field for the upcoming year. So these decisions are not, I guess, emotional decisions. They're business related decisions, and a lot of fans have problems understanding the difference between the emotional side and the business side. And I saw some comments about Emmanuel Sanders. We should have kept Emmanuel Sanders. He did get a favorable contract from the Buffalo Bills, which I believe the Saints could have possibly matched or going forward and decided to match, but you have young talent that has to be groomed as well. You have emerging stars like Marquez Callaway, you have Traquan Smith, you have Deontay Harris, right? So how do those guys get an opportunity to get onto the field if you keep an Emmanuel Sanders? So you have to listen carefully also to what the press conferences are said as well, with Mickey Loomis saying that, no, these are not, or the interview he did, these are not the times where the Saints are going to, I guess, have to start all over again. They're just retooling, right? And in retooling, you're going to have those situations where you're not going to have those favorable business decisions that you as a fan may like, but it's necessary for the team to continue going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And listen, as long as Mickey Loomis is in that front office and that staff with Kai Hartley and everybody else, and the visor, Sean Payton, is roaming the sideline, this team is going to overturn every stone they can think of to try to put a competitive product on the field. Even during those 3 straight 7-9 debacles, you can't say that the Saints didn't put forth their best effort to try to be competitive. And by the way, for folks that want to sign everybody off of the free agent market, you step into your time capsule a little bit and look at what this team did in 2014, 15, and to a lesser extent 16. They were signing those guys, those type of guys that people want them to sign now. They were signing the Jarris Birds and the James Laurinitises and the Paul Krugers and the Brandon Browners. And those moves were not paying off. This team turned the corner when they decided, all right, we are going to focus now on building a young nucleus through the draft. And in 2017, 18, 19, and last year, they have done exactly that. They've used free agency more to tweak their team, to bring in the Demario Davises, the Malcolm Browns, and people like that.
Well, and guys, think about this. And I know, Jerry, you say you gave the Saints a C+ for how they handled the salary cap. Any way you can maneuver down and whittle down $85 million over the cap and get under the cap is a testament of how well you have people understanding how to revise contracts, restructure contracts, and also project for the future what personnel will be good for the team as a whole. Okay, so I understand the business moves, and Donald, you said it best. The Saints want to sign young guys, sign and draft young, good, talented players, and have good, cheap, veteran, talented players as well. We keep forgetting in 2006, that's exactly what this team did. I remember that team. I remember we having Reggie Bush as the number 2 overall draft choice, but I remember how they were able to get like a Hollis Thomas. You remember to be able to come in and plug up the middle on that defensive line. I remember how they were able to get a guy called, what's his name? Marcus Colston in the 7th round, right? To be able to immediately come in and make a contribution for the New Orleans Saints offense, right? So you're going to have those talented players that the Saints are going to be able to put into the building. Is it a rebuild? I don't think so. It's a retool. Yes, I believe it has to be a retool. And think they got value in trading Malcolm Brown, who is excellent in the run stop defense, over to the Jaguars. So you have an extra pick there in the 7th round, which I believe they had to give up 1 pick because of a fine, whatever. So, I mean, the Saints are doing their due diligence, and you look at guys in the past, and Donald, that's a great point. Lance Moore, Pierre Thomas, undrafted free agents, well, Lance Moore came from Cleveland or whatever, and we got him off those guys. But I'm just going to say this. You got to trust the process and understand the process. Take your heart out of it and trust the process. That's the whole deal there. All right, let's talk about one big announcement that occurred for the New Orleans Saints. It's not the Drew Brees announcement, but we have a new starting quarterback competition, one that we haven't seen in over 15 seasons, but we can go back a little bit further than that, past the 2001 season, when they had Billy Joe Tolliver and names that we would like not to mention in New Orleans, New Orleans history, but it's before Aaron Brooks took over for Jeff Blake. We have not seen a competent, like a quarterback competition that we're going to see between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Bob, how does that all translate out for on the field for us coming this summer in Saints training camp?
Boy, I tell you, it's going to be a very interesting development, to see how it unfolds. I have said all along, and I'm not about to change yet, that I believe that Jameis Winston is going to be the starter in 2021. So I found it very interesting when Sean Payton essentially said, no, this is going to be an open quarterback competition between Taysom and Jameis. And you know what? Yeah, Taysom does deserve a shot. I will acknowledge that. You got to believe that Jameis Winston is the heads and shoulders favorite at this stage of the game. But if Taysom really wows in training camp and outplays him in the preseason games, keeping our fingers crossed that there will be some, and Taysom opens up as the starter. This offense, we saw just a small taste of it last year. It'll be very interesting to see how Coach Payton retools his offense around what Taysom Hill, or for that matter, what Jameis Winston does best. That's one of the many, many things that made Drew Brees so effective, is because Coach Payton took what he wanted to do offensively, took what Drew Brees does best physically and mentally, and meshed the two together. And that's what kind of thing makes Payton such a special coach. And he's going to be put to the challenge every bit as much as both Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston are, to try to win these jobs.
Yeah, winning the job is primary for both of those guys, but I also believe developing this offense with a new understanding of who your leader is going to be necessary as well. So if we have to be fair to both of those players, you have to be fair to Taysom, you have to be fair to Jameis. You don't know what you're going to get and how the offensive players are going to respond, right? But as fans, we cannot expect Drew Brees to walk through that door again. You can't have Taysom or Jameis looking over their shoulders. And I think that's the most important thing. This is a new era in New Orleans Saints history, but it can be an exciting era, but we have to just support the decision that the New Orleans Saints personnel, front office guys, as well as Sean Payton is going to go through when it comes to deciding who's going to be the next New Orleans Saints quarterback. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Drew Brees. Drew Brees is now riding off into the sunset, and he's not going to go out quietly because he has some gigs lined up, so to speak. But let's talk about first, how do you feel, Bob, about Drew Brees leaving the New Orleans Saints, but Drew Brees, the person, the quarterback, or how do you see him as a whole?
Man, I won't lie. I'm going to miss him. In a New Orleans Saints uniform, the player and the person. And I have only had a little bit of personal contact with Drew Brees, in my lifetime. And they were both at New Orleans Saints training camp when they held it up in Greenbrier. But listen, as far as Drew Brees, the player, and I've said this many times so far, it's time. I recognize how difficult it is to make that decision and step away as a competitor, because your ego, your pride, your competitiveness makes you believe that you have one more throw in you. You have one more game in you. You have one more championship run in you. But I also think that Drew himself recognized the fact that that wasn't the case about a quarter of the way into the 2020 regular season. In my opinion, I saw the look in his eyes, and he exhibited a lot of frustration with himself. That I can't do this for these guys, for my teammates, for my family anymore. And that's what makes it so difficult for a competitor to step away. But given what Drew has meant to certainly the New Orleans Saints franchise, I believe the term savior is not too strong a word. But not only the Saints franchise, but what he and Brittany and his family meant to the entire Gulf Coast region. Listen, New Orleans Saints football existed before Drew Brees. It will exist after Drew Brees. But what Drew and Sean Payton together did, they made the New Orleans Saints consistently relevant year after year after year, more than one decade, which is something we have never seen before.
Right. All my life, I've been a Saints fan, 54 years, and I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, more ugly than good. So to understand how the symbiotic relationship that he and Sean Payton had, to be winners, where we had seen too many losing seasons, too many disappointments as Saints fans and people who love the New Orleans Saints, it was just difficult. But guys, you have to appreciate what we did see in Brees. We did see somebody who embodied the character of the city, resilient, always adapting, always being able to work hard and put that ethic in and have that passion to be able to do it with class. So I anticipate that Drew is going to have a fantastic post-career in New Orleans with NBC, as well as all of the other endeavors. He's already committing to the community. He and Demario Davis have been selected to redevelop that Six Flags project out there in New Orleans East. So I believe Drew Brees is still going to be committed to the New Orleans area. You have not heard the last from Mr. Drew Brees, as well as his family in the Brees Foundation, as well as his wife, Brittany. They have done a fantastic job together. All right, let's go on. Let's talk a little bit about any potential new guys that are on the market. One guy that really intrigued me, two guys. Let's talk about Richard Sherman and Kyle Fuller. The Saints have a hole at the cornerback level, right? Opposite Lattimore, what do? We lost Janoris Jenkins. He's now a Tennessee Titan, so there's no opportunity to re-sign him. So do you believe Kyle Fuller or Richard Sherman fits better in the New Orleans Saints defense?
Kyle, if you're telling me that I have to choose between those two players, I'm going to go with Kyle Fuller. If you told me I was going to get Richard Sherman from 5-6 years ago, I'd take Sherman in a heartbeat. And both players, in their prime, and Kyle Fuller's only 29 years old. Both players in their prime are and were spectacular players. But to me, Sherman at this point in his career, he's a lot more injury prone, as we've seen the last 2 years. And he's on, and I realize it's a strong word, but I'm going to use it anyway. I almost consider him a liability in man coverage. He's still an outstanding off the ball defender. Great ball skills, terrific understanding of opposing offenses. But we know that Dennis Allen, the Saints defensive coordinator, likes to play his cornerbacks very aggressively and impress coverage as often as possible. And even when they shift to the so-called Tampa 2, it's a modified Tampa 2. He still uses his corners in man coverage. That's why I think that of the two players you mentioned, Kyle Fuller is the better option for New Orleans. But I also still believe that the Saints are going to address this position rather highly in the draft, even if not with a first-round pick, certainly with a second, or be aggressive in the third round. And there are a handful of starting caliber cornerbacks, terrific corners, in my opinion, that are going to be available. But outside of Fuller and Sherman, both of whom will probably have to cost a little bit more than what we'd like to see the Saints spend. We have Adoree Jackson on the free agent market, Casey Hayward, and a little bit cheaper option in Garyon Connolly, former teammate of Marshawn Lattimore's at Ohio State, by the way, who sort of revitalized his career with the Houston Texans. Those are just a handful of cornerbacks on the market. We've been here, as you pointed out, Kyle, we've been hearing most often that the Saints are linked to Richard Sherman, probably because of Chris Richard, the new defensive backs coach, and their longtime ties in Seattle. But there's a handful of directions the Saints could go with cornerback in free agency.
Yeah, good point. Chris Richard's presence in the New Orleans Saints defensive, I guess, locker room doesn't mean it's guaranteed that Richard Sherman is going to be here. But I do like what these guys could bring. Richard Sherman brings his leadership, his postseason experience to be able to help this team, and he can mentor young guys, right? So you get that. Kyle Fuller, I think he's emerging into becoming a very, very good player. I was surprised the Bears decided to let him go, but they must know something we don't. But I just believe Kyle Fuller will be a better choice in the long run. Now, Brian brings up a good point. There are two young, talented kids out of Georgia. I forget their names. One is running a 4.2. He ran a 4.2 at the pro days or one of these time sessions, and Campbell was the other guy. Campbell is the one that most teams have been coveting. He's a long, rangy guy, and he has good cover skills. Both of those guys are very talented. Don't think Campbell's going to be available for the Saints at that time. What are your thoughts?
And that is a big question. And you're right. Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes, they're both wonderful athletes. Campbell is the guy. When you hear draft cornerbacks, the kid from Caleb Farley, Fairley, and Patrick Surtain from Alabama, they're the consensus top two guys. Number 3 seems to be J.C. Horn from South Carolina. That's certainly my number 3. But Tyson Campbell is also kind of lumped right up in there, as well as a kid that you, me, and our friend Mike Detillier loves from Northwestern, Greg Newsome. So those are just 3 guys. As far as Tyson Campbell and also Eric Stokes, I watched them, and you're right. They both have good coverage ability. Certainly the athleticism to stay with any receiver in the National Football League. What I kind of don't care for, Tyson Campbell tends to get a little grabby in man coverage, and Eric Stokes, to me anyway, and I've just started watching film on some of these guys. Eric Stokes has a little bit of a tight hip turn. So a shifty guy could possibly beat him, especially out of the slot. My favorite guy undoubtedly is J.C. Horn. And like I said, I know we all love Greg Newsome. And another name to watch as draft approaches is Elijah Molden from Washington too. Yeah,
I like him as well. Newsome, I like Horn, I believe, brings that attitude.
Yeah.
And his lineage very well with Joe Horn, but what I saw in him, and he's matured into the position, and I think he has that same sort of style that Marshawn Lattimore had when he was at Ohio State, so he could be able to mature into the role for the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion. All right, so one Facebook user said, let's sign Connolly and have all Ohio State cornerback tandem. And shout out to everybody on YouTube, our platform. That's Jerry And Asante Samuel, that's another good name.
Yeah.
Asante Samuel Jr. out of FSU, of course. That's a good one. If we draft horns, can the Saints give him number 87? No. He is a cornerback. 87s, the 80s are for receivers only, guys. I think Joe Horn would be by 28, will move up. Okay, that's a good possibility. Brian, you bring up a good possibility. Now, the Saints were able to get 3 compensatory picks there based upon the losses that they had in free agents the previous year. Do you think the Saints can package a deal to be able to get a better spot in order to get the player they like?
Yeah, I absolutely think they can, and I think that they will. We have seen Sean Payton do and Mickey Loomis do this year after year in the draft. If it's not in the first round, it is somewhere in one of the later rounds, be it day 2 or even day 3, where they identify a player that they like, and they will move to go get him. They won't wait to see if he falls to them. And the first round is a strong possibility that the Saints move up. Like you said, Kyle, they have 2 picks in the 3rd round. They have a pick in the 4th, and of course their 2nd round pick. They have 4 picks in the first 120 selections or something like that. So that's a pretty good position to be sitting in. Granted, you still have holes to fill other than cornerback, but if they identify a kid like J.C. Horn, and I agree, in the PFF Pro Football Focus mocks I've done, JC has fallen 228 a handful of times, but more often than not, he's gone. So I think that if you identify a player like JC Horn, or if they decide they want a quarterback like Mac Jones, and his name has certainly been floated out there, you almost have to move up in the first round to guarantee that you're going to get him. So while the Saints currently have a pick in the first round, 2nd round, 2/3, 4th, 6th, and 7th, I highly doubt it's going to remain that way as we go through the draft process.
Okay, good point. Xavier Collins, I'm sorry. What do you think about him?
He's one of the best off the ball linebacker prospects out there. And it certainly fits a need for New Orleans with the release of Quan Alexander. It's possible that Quan could be brought back at a cheaper price. That still remains to be seen. But at this point in time, you certainly have to identify linebacker as another major need for New Orleans. Collins and Nick Bolton from Missouri are the 2 names that you hear linked to New Orleans if they use a first-round draft pick. Most often, to me, Collins is the more finished product. He's the better all-around defender, better all-around athlete. And again, Collins, I'm not sure you'd have to move up in the first round, but you would definitely have to take Collins with your first-round pick. Out of Tulsa. But linebacker is another position. I just see the question from you, Brian. Chaz Surratt. Man, this kid is an athlete from North Carolina. He's an all ACC performer, former quarterback, so he has a great understanding of opposing offenses. Chaz, he might be a reach for 28th pick of the first round, but certainly a name to watch through the 2nd round. If the Saints are going to fill that that hole at linebacker in the draft, like I think they will.
Okay, Bolton is a little small.
Yes.
Linebacker is another one. Let's see here. Defensive tackle. Any defensive tackles you have on your radar?
You and I just concluded an interview with Coach Jim Mora Jr. And he mentioned a kid from UCLA. I'm only going to say jump on the Osa train. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. And I can't wait to click on his film after what Coach told us about him. But he's defensive tackle from UCLA. Really strong athlete. Very strong in the trenches. And whoever just posted the point or the question about defensive tackle, defensive tackle is another hole to fill. Not so sure you want to see him use a first-round pick on it, unless that's the best player available, because you still do have David Onyemata and a couple developing talents in Shai Tuttle and Malcolm Roach, as well as the possibility they could bring back Sheldon Rankins on a team-friendly contract. But, Osa is a kid that might be available, should be available in the second round. Elim Mcneal, who I have watched a little bit on from NC State. He's a guy that we know the Saints have already had a virtual interview with. He's really powerful, defensive tackle from North Carolina State, to watch. And in later rounds, and I had him in my mock draft, Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech is a guy to watch. He has the build more like Onyemata. He's a little bit lighter weight, but has really good strength at the point of attack. Not going to be quite the run stuffer that you'd like that role to be filled by someone now that Malcolm Brown is gone. But Milton Williams is a guy who could be available as late as the fourth round even.
All right. Sorry about that. Good point. Good points. All right, guys. You guys had some good points out there. What's it? Dylan Moses was one to consider. You have here, don't want to be a homer. What about Shelvin from LSU?
Now, Shelvin would be the type of run stuffer that you had. Is the type of body build and the playing style that you had in Malcolm Brown. And again, that might be a kid that would be available late in the third round or early on day 3. I'm always hesitant to talk about LSU players as we head towards the draft for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't want to be crucified by Who Dat Nation if I say anything negative. But number two, Sean Payton very, very rarely drafts LSU players for whatever reason.
Oh man, don't get me started on that, man. So he and Coach O, man, they were on good terms before the possible steal of Ryan Nielsen. Now they're not. So that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, guys. Let's see. Speedy wide receivers. Are there anyone available? Anybody nice in the middle of the 2021 draft?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, in my mock draft, through our network, Saints News Network yesterday, I drafted a kid in the 6th round from Illinois, Josh Imatorbhebhe. And yes, I have practiced saying that name out loud a couple dozen times. He is an athletic freak. He might not be an Olympic caliber sprinter, but he can burn up your stopwatches, which as a track guy, you folks know I love. But the man will jump through the gym. He has an amazing vertical leap. And you watch the film. Illinois is a bad program, but he is a shining star off of them. He has great ball skills when the ball is in the air. He represents a vertical threat. He could be a deadly weapon as an outside, as a boundary receiver. Has to polish up his route running, which is why I think he will go on day 3. I used a 6th round pick on him in the mock. I don't know if he'll last that long because of his athletic talents, but he's a guy to watch as far as a day 3 talent. If you're looking for day 2, a couple guys I like, and I think his first name's Elijah, but Elijah Moore from Mississippi. Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State, and Rondale Moore from Purdue. Now Moore is a smaller guy, very shifty, kind of a Debo Samuel type of receiver. Powerful squat build, but dangerous in the open field. Tylan Wallace and Elijah Moore. I think Moore is a little bit on the smaller side too, but Wallace was a really good productive receiver out of Oklahoma State. And we know that those Big 12 teams like to run, like to throw the ball a lot. So he certainly has experience as a route runner. I prefer the Saints wait to take a receiver until maybe day 3. But if one falls to them, like a really solid starter falls to them in a round 2 or with one of their round 3 picks, don't be surprised if they use it.
Right. All right. We got some good comments, man. You guys are on top of things. You heard about this young guy, Kylan Bell, running back.
Mississippi State. Yeah. He's a bowling ball, a bowling ball between the tackles, but a really accomplished pass receiver too. again, given, and we know, coming from our own John Hendrix, we know that the Saints love their running back room right now. But we also know that Sean Payton is not hesitant to pull the trigger if he sees a running back talent on day 3, or pulling one in as an undrafted free agent. Kylan is going to be drafted possibly later on in day 2. But if he slips into day 3, watch for him there.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Facebook user brought up a good point about Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, and I have had an opportunity to watch him the past couple of seasons with A&M. I like what I see. The mobility, has a good arm. I just think he did not have the best quarterback coaching throughout his career, so he has a raw potential, a good opportunity to, if he fits inside a room like the New Orleans Saints, can he mature? Can he develop? Yes, I think that's a guy that should be looked at. Another guy is, what's his kid, Brady Davis, that we may have a chance to interview as well. So look at him as a possibility. Tidra, you say too close to home and get in trouble for the LSU guys. All right. Brian, kid from Purdue, and Tony from Florida. Any thoughts about those guys or what you think about those guys?
Well, we just mentioned Rondale Moore a minute ago. He's probably going to go in the 2nd round, possibly early 3rd. I really like Rondale. Kadarius Toney, he's a spectacular receiver. And I'm a Florida guy anyway. So I would love to see him in a Saints uniform, but Toney is going to be drafted in the 1st round. There's little question about that. And again, my opinion, I think the Saints have too many other holes to fill. Excuse me, to use a 1st round draft choice on a receiver. Having said that, now we'll see Sean Payton use a 1st round draft choice on a receiver. But again, if they get a kid like Kadarius Toney with their 1st round, it's hard to argue with that logic. You put him beside Michael Thomas and watch him develop, and you're going to want as many weapons as you can for whoever, be it Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston, for your brand new quarterback in 2021. And Kyle, to piggyback on what you said about Kellen Moore, Armand, excuse me. I actually did use my 3rd round pick on him in my mock draft yesterday. And I like Mond's game a lot too. What you said about the poor coaching that he got in A&M, I hadn't realized, but that explains, because the only thing I really didn't like about him was how low he holds the ball at his release point. That can certainly be a fundamental that can be tweaked, via coaching. And listen, and I've said this before too, if the Saints are ever going to use a rather high draft, and I say rather high, I'm not talking necessarily 1st, but maybe 2nd or 3rd round pick on a quarterback to develop, where you don't have to press him into action right away, this is the time to do it. Grab a guy like Mond or Jamie Newman, a guy we know that they've talked to who opted out last season, but former Wake Forest transfer to Georgia. You grab a guy that you think that you can develop if you don't have supreme confidence that Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill is not going to be your long-term starter.
Okay. I got a bone to pick with a couple of you guys, but one thing I would say is this, man. When we look at the quarterbacks that are out there, there's some good, talented young guys. Of course, you got the North Dakota guy, Lance. You have, I saw Zach Wilson's pro day. He looked outstanding. Of course, you got Trevor Lawrence, and everybody else is kind of Mac Jones, and everybody else is kind of here or there, hit or miss. But I think if you want some value picks and some good picks that could be really good guys to develop, look at those mid-round guys who are from smaller programs who have the ability to develop as a player, like Sam Ehlinger. He comes from Texas, but if you've seen this guy play, he has the potential to ball if you give him the right opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good guys out there that we should not overlook. Remember, Mr. Tom Brady was a what pick? 6th round draft choice. Mr. Drew Brees was what? A 2nd round draft choice. So not everybody who's going to be at the top at the number 1 slot is always going to be a sure shot and surefire Hall of Famer. Let's just be honest about this. You know, you have probably more undrafted free agents in the Hall of Fame than you have number 1 picks in the Hall of Fame. So that's something to pay attention to. Okay, go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more. And to piggyback on that, especially at quarterback, Dak Prescott came off the board in the 4th round. Guys like Andy Dalton and Derek Carr, they were 2nd round picks, along with Brees. So I don't think you necessarily have to move heaven and earth to move up in the 1st round to get a quarterback, unless you are 100% sure. And when I say because coaches lose jobs over decisions like that. I don't think the Saints are going to be in a position to move up in the top 10, top 6, and get a guy like Wilson. Trevor Lawrence is off the board. I think we all know that. But to get a guy like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, who I think is going to be a really good quarterback out of Ohio State, or even Trey Lance to develop, you got to start looking at that 2nd tier. And like you pointed out, you ask yourself the question, is Mac Jones the guy I want to run my franchise? Because if so, you got to go get him. Or if you wait to see what other quarterbacks that you can develop. Sam Ehlinger, I love KJ Costello as a day 3 pick, 6th round maybe, from Mississippi State. I love his physical talent, his raw physical ability, and his competitive spirit. Or like the guys we said before, Kyle Trask from Florida, Amon from Texas A&M, or Jamie Newman. Any of those guys you probably have to grab with a 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Yeah, there's some good young talent from Division 2 and 3 colleges and universities, right? And there's some good young talent from HBCUs that they need to look at and consider as well. Saints haven't done much of that in the past when looking at guys from the SWAC or MEAC or CIAA or SIAC and those guys. So I think this year, if I looked at what is happening, if you have paid attention to what's going on with Jackson State and Deion Sanders, how he's helped to turn that program around this spring in spring football, he mentioned it in the press conference he had last week that he sees some NFL talent on the field that those guys are competing. A guy like Warren Newman from New Orleans, who Deion Sanders has on his team, is an outstanding, dynamic guy, just like Alvin Kamara. I mean, if you want to see somebody who has the speed, the shiftiness, the talent out the backfield, this kid has that same ability. Not as strong as Kamara when he needs to shed a tackler, but there's some talent out there. And I think a lot of times we look at big programs and think those are the only programs to be able to draft people from. Trask and Ehlinger, yeah. And KJ said, look, let's just end all of this stuff and get Russell. Right. I hear you, KJ. All right. Any last comments before we sign off there, Bob, about what's going on with the Saints or anything that we need to pay attention to with the team at this time?
Well, I mean, we mentioned a couple free agent prospects at cornerback. Watch for them. To kick the tires for the Saints, that is, to kick the tires on maybe a couple linebackers or defensive linemen this weekend as well. The first wave of free agency is starting to die down. So if you're watching these contracts, they're starting to get a little bit lower in that sweet spot where we like to see the New Orleans bring in players. So folks, New Orleans is going to sign a couple players still. Just be patient, like you said before. Kyle, trust the process. And as far as once we get it, full fledged, 100%. You and I are already starting to delve into it a little bit. Once we get full fledged into our draft, analysis, on the shows and in our articles, pay very, like you said, pay very close attention to these small schools. Sean Payton doesn't shy away from that. Teron Armstead, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Marcus Colston, Hofstra, even a guy like Caden Ellis from Idaho.
Right.
We could go Deontay Harris from Assumption. So watch these guys. Not everybody that the Saints are going to get to contribute is going to come from a Big 12 or SEC or ACC. It's one of the big Power 5 conferences. Just like we said with free agency, trust the process. These guys are very much doing their due diligence on the prospects that they are identifying to help their team.
Look, guys, I did a quick profile last night. Emory Hunt from Football Game Plan was on CBS Sports, and he brought up a name of a young guy who had a great pro day yesterday, Michael Strachan. I think and that's Strachan. So I did a profile on him. I called it a NFL Diamonds in the Rough. So go and read that at www.saints.media on our Sports Illustrated site. Okay. So I looked at his measurables. The kid is 6'5", so he's an inch taller than Marcus Colston. Same weight, 225, ran a really good time in I think Marcus Colston ran a 4. Let me get it right. Marcus Colston ran a 4.5 when he left Hofstra, right? And this kid here yesterday, he's out the University of Charleston. So guys, look him up. Go to the article that I just posted on Saints News Network. So, okay, so he's 6'5", 228, 85-inch wingspan, 10-inch hands, a little small for a big wide receiver by some, but, right in that sweet spot. He ran a 4.46 in the 40, and he put up 225 pounds bench press 20 times. Good leaping ability, has great hands. For the Golden Eagles, he was, I think he was first team in the MEC conference. So he has a good ability. Why do I mention this guy? It's just like what we talked about with Colston. Small school, great ability, someone that may be overlooked, right? Has the potential with the New Orleans Saints to come in and make a difference. That's what you want, guys who have that potential to come in and make a difference. And the New Orleans Saints is better than anybody else in giving opportunities to small college programs, guys with good character, good abilities like that. All right. Any last thoughts, Bob, before we sign off?
No, man. I mean, you and I have had a crazy busy morning already. So folks, again, thank you so much for tuning in this morning on our impromptu show. And be sure to follow us at through www.saints.media and the Saints News Network, as well as both yours and my personal pages, particularly the Bayou Blitz page over on Facebook.
All right, follow Bob Rose. How can they follow you on the World Wide Web?
Well, I mentioned the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Facebook group can be followed on Facebook, Bob Rose, or over on Twitter at Bobby R2613.
Bobby R2613 on Twitter. That's where he brings all the mayhem and all the chaos. So you guys go follow him there. You can follow me at KTMOZE on Twitter, and you can follow us at Saints News on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. Look, do us a favor. If y'all aren't watching us right now, hit like, and also do us a favor, retweet or repost or share this post. We want to get more and more people engaged. We're going to bring you more and more opportunities to chat with us, especially at lunchtime. I like these lunchtime chats. These are good to have. And also, we're going to have Coach Jim Moore Jr. I'll post this video for you guys later. We had a great conversation with him earlier, and he said some really favorable things about the New Orleans Saints and the franchise. All right. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great one. And don't forget, go to @Saints News for the latest in New Orleans Saints news from John Hendrix, Bob Rose, Brendan Boylan, as well as myself and Mike Detillier. I'm Kyle T. Mosley here with Bob Rose of Bayou Blitz. Bob, have a good one. Take care.
You too.